Thanks for making time for this, y'all. I just threw on the recording. Here's what I want to do is let's just have an excavation roundtable talk.
Awesome.
I don't know where the conversation is going to go, but I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, sounds great, man. What's on first here, Austin? What are you thinking?
Catch us up. Like right now, it's like here the snow's starting to melt. Mike, I'm sure you're starting to get busy too. Brock, I know you're probably slinging some septics already. What's the word for this year? How's this year schedule looking so far?
Yeah, we're just waiting for, we got half loads. I don't know if you guys deal with half loads much down there, but load restrictions. So, yeah, we've been fighting with that on a lot of jobs, but fortunately, there's someone looking out for us, and they're lifting load restrictions early everywhere. So as of this Monday, load restrictions are off. So that kind of means full steam ahead for us. We got one job that we took on that we're on right now. We started last week. It was kind of last minute, but it's on a no half load road. So even all throughout the year, there's no load restrictions. So we took it on. It's pretty far out of our way. It's pretty far from our shop. But we took it so that we could kind of get some work and get some income and, and not have to worry about half loads. So we're kind of eager to get going now that they're coming off this Monday.
Can you explain what half loads are for people listening?
Yeah, so up here in Canada, just I don't know if they do this in the States. Obviously, you guys get the same amount of frost too in the northern parts of the States, but load restrictions are just to protect the roads from frost when the frost is melting in the ground. So, when there's lots of frost, as it's melting with heavy trucks, it'll heave the roads and it'll destroy the roads. So what they do is they make it so half loads for us is from March 1st to April 30th, so 2 months. And actually some townships is March 1st to May 31st, so 3 months. So you can't actually go in till June. They call it half load, but it's not a true half load. What it is 5 tons. So it's 5 tons per axle. Meaning that, so our, say our tandem truck there, right? It's 5 tons per axle. By the time we take the GVW, the truck, because it has to be included, we take the gross weight of the truck and do the 5 tons per axle. We can put 2.5 ton in it legally, right? On a half load road. So we have a truck that's capable of 16 to 18 ton, and we can put 2.5. So we're doing roughly 7 trips for one dump truck trip without half load. So if you do, so if you do the math on that, it's not even worth starting the truck, right? Because you're doing 7 to get one load's worth. You're getting, you're doing 7 trips. So like a triaxle, depending on where you are, a triaxle is normally good for say 22 ton. During half loads, good for about 4.5 to 5.5, right? So depending, so you're 4 to 5 trips for what you would normally get for one triaxle load. So generally, everyone just parks their trucks this time of year because you can't even. It's not even worth moving, right? You can't even float anything. You can't move anything around. The terrible part about it is even and they're handing out fines left, right, and center, and they're definitely watching for it. A friend of mine who's got a septic vac truck as well. I've kind of hoped that maybe we would they would turn a blind eye on us. We've never really run into it, but with our septic truck as well, is that they turn a blind eye to it for that because it's partially deemed essential. Because I know gas, like say any truck that's delivering fuel and any milk trucks for dairy farms don't have to abide by half loads. So I've seen literature before that said that a septic truck would be exempt as well because it's essential if someone's tank is backing up. But a friend of mine got nailed this year in his septic truck. He didn't even have a full load on, but it just with the weight of it, he was overweight. So they gave him a list of tickets, a couple miles long, hit him with everything they had. And then another buddy of mine runs a hydrovac. And actually the truck is so heavy from factory, he was completely empty, no water, no nothing on board. And he got a list of tickets for that too. They pulled him over and he was overweight, empty. So he basically during half loads can't even run that hydrovac truck. Can't get off a highway. You get on a back road and you're overweight.
I complained about ours.
Say that again.
I said, and I thought I was going to complain about ours. This year was great, but that's brutal.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It just adds a whole nother element, right? Like that's what's really tough is you think, you make it through January, February, hard time, tough times of things being slow and it's cold and you're just getting geared up for the year and then boom, they hit you with half loads. So then really you can't start work until May, right?
And yours come at the same time every year. You were given dates like that.
The signs are right on the road. Yeah. It says right
No
there's
kidding.
signs on signs right on the side of every road, 5 ton per axle. From March 1st to April 30th.
Yeah, ours go by. They'll go out when you start getting warm up, and they auger down in the shoulder gravel and start checking for frost and see where it's at, and they kind of monitor it by individual county. So they go through and they'll turn on. There's years where they actually, I mean, if there are roads that didn't have a lot of traffic through the winter time and there really isn't any frost in it, sometimes they won't even turn them on certain sections of road, or they will like when you're getting those back and forth days where it's still getting like 20 at night but like 45 during the day, they'll turn them back off so you can run at night, because once it freezes back up, so then they'll give you from like midnight till, so if you had to move a piece of equipment, you got from like midnight till 8 a.m. to get moved, and then do stuff like that. They're kind of going away from that because a lot of guys took advantage of that. They, log truck guys hauling, and then it's like, well, we'll just get one more load, and now it's 9, and now it's 10, and so they kind of shut down a little bit on that. But we were pretty fortunate this year. We were pretty mild, and ours didn't come on until, man, I want to say second week of March, maybe. What are we now? We're into April. Yeah, it was probably first week of March, and they were probably only on for 10, 12 days. And then they shut them back off because we were warm for so long. This was wild for this year, but normally they're on for like a month. But Michigan's an axle weight state, so they kind of have a different growth setup, and it depends on your axle combination and stuff and what your spread is on like tandem setups. And so basically the biggest factor is what size tires you're running. So you can get 700 pounds per inch of width of tire normally. So if you have like a big, oversized steer tire that's 12, 13 inches wide, you can put, 7,000 and some pounds on each tire. So front axle would be 14,000, whatever, however it configures out. And then frost laws, they go down to 450 per inch. So it's not even quite down to half anyways. So if you can stuff a bunch of axles, which we're allowed a max of 11 axles. So if you have a low boy and like we call them a Joe dog setup, so you like have a double kingpin hitch, so it adds another set of axles up in the front. Company I worked for, we actually moved a 48-ton excavator during frost laws on a state highway, but not on county because state's a little higher. But yeah, we moved a pretty big hoe in frost laws if you can stuff enough axles at it and get pretty wild with it.
Man,
Yeah,
that's
you guys down in the States got more axles than anybody. It's always interesting going down there. You see trucks, it's nothing but nothing but fucking axles down there.
Oh,
So
I know. And it's funny
yeah.
that we even complain because you even go to any states around us, and everything you see is tandem axles. And if you see a semi at the lead, they only have 2 axles on the lead, so you're not even really worth all the money you're going to spend in a tractor and a lead, because it's really just going to haul about the same as what a tandem's going to anyways.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
most guys are running tandems, and then they look at us like we're a bunch of clowns, which is why our roads are garbage here in Michigan. But yeah, we can our asphalt trucks and stuff, the flow boys, they can run 11 axles total, truck and trailer. So they got 8 axle trailers running 50-ton on the load. They can scale 50-ton plus the truck and trailer.
so for both of your operations. I mean, Brock, like you mentioned, it doesn't even make sense to go out on. And you were saying you're going to go out on a job doing half loads this year?
No, well, so we're on one right now. So there is some roads up here. If you're not on if it's not on a back road, like highways aren't half load road, right? Or like say like major county roads. So someone reach out to me for a job, and the first thing, it would say an hour. It's about an hour and 15-minute drive from our shop. So it's it's a big pull for us. I don't like going that far. But I looked at it, and there's no half load roads from there into any of the pits. Well, there's pits local. So I looked at the job and said, okay, this is a job that we can do and don't have to worry about half load. So we ended up, I designed it, quoted it ASAP, kind of got it, from the time I went on site to the time we started was about just over a week. So I wanted to lock it in really quick. So, because it's pretty rare to find a job that's not on a half load road. So we're on that right now. And then, obviously we got a bunch of work coming up for, as soon as, basically starting this week now. But now that we got this torrential downpour, we were on that site, and then we had to call it on Friday, because there's just too much water. You can't even move, like you can't move the machines anymore. It's just a complete mud mess. There's spots with 2 or 3 feet of water. We dug the base for the septic. It's a big cut, real deep cut, and we had to trench out to the farmer's field to de-water the whole area and try and get it de-watered for the weekend. But it hasn't stopped raining, so really it's not going to dry up on us there. And when you take a low density soil like filter sand and try and put it in where in clay that's just soaked in mud, it's soaking wet. It just makes an absolute mess out of everything, and inspectors don't like to see it. And you end up using probably 40% more material because you just wreck half of your material trying to put it in there. So it's not even worth trying.
Yeah. So I want to talk trucking on this because this brings up an interesting conversation, and it's something that I've been kind of running on our model on the back end, just calculating everything. I want to talk trucking. Both of you own your own dump trucks, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brock. So what would you,
Yeah.
if you didn't own your own dump truck, real quick, before we jump into that, what would you pay in your market to contract a tandem?
Who like $180 an hour. Seems to
180 an
be-
hour
Yeah.
for tandem?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty rough. We're in a very rural area, which you would think would make pricing cheaper, which there's a few guys around that you could probably get cheaper. But the most ready available company is going to be the one that I used to work for. And they're just into such high commercial municipality jobs and stuff that their price, and they're so large. I mean, the prices are set because their guys get paid a lot, their trucks are new, their insurance is high, so it all reflects it. And really, if you want to get something and get it done, it's going to be through them, and that's where their prices are. You may get lucky and find somebody around the 140, 150 range, but they're probably just going to be a 1 or 2 guy operation, and they're probably busy, and good luck trying to hunt them down.
That's crazy. Looks like I know Brock was having a couple connection issues. I'm going to send him the call-in instructions here real quick.
Sounds good.
He said if he dropped off, it would do it. But while I do that, can you talk about, looks like he's back here.
Yeah.
Brock, you got us?
Yeah, I got.
So Mike was just kind of wrapping up his contracted pricing. What would it be if you were to just contract, an owner operator tandem guy up there?
Yeah, pure. So for a tandem, you're looking at about 100 and you're probably looking at 120 to 130 bucks an hour for a tandem. And you're about 150, around 150, 160 an hour for a triaxle up here. And then, obviously cost of material and depending on whatever their markup is going to be on that.
Yeah, for sure. What is a triaxle run? Tons?
Triaxle, most of them around 21 to 22. 21 to
Okay.
22 tons. Some of these new slingers can get close to 25 ton on them. But yeah, you're about 22, 23 ton. Most tandems, so we have our tandem is an old tri. It's an old short triaxle. So we remove the lift is removed. So we can get about 16 and a half ton on it, where most tandems are around the 14 and a half to 15 ton mark that you can get on a tandem.
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys run belly dumps for anything in your operation?
No, I've never seen them too often. Not where we are.
We rented a company that when I used to work for the other business that I did, for one job, and it was actually pretty slick, but don't have a lot of use for them, I guess. In what we do, we were doing a road, complete dig out is all clay, so we were half width putting traffic on the one side and had the other half of the road dug out, and we would just have traffic control shut traffic down and belly dump the sand and chase it with the grader and just fold it into our cut. So that's the only time in 16 years that I've been doing it that we found use for it. Work pretty well in those situations, but most of the time everything's so stinking tight, and definitely trying to end dump in and get things into places the belly dump wouldn't work out very good.
So whenever
You
you
find
guys
with
are
you,
bidding,
Austin, are you? No, sorry, carry
no,
on. I cut you off there.
no,
No,
go
I
ahead.
just said for your yeah, for your business, Austin, you wouldn't be running much trucking for you though, doing the land clearing, would you? Everything's generally repurposed, like you're just grinding things up, mulching things up, but you wouldn't really use much trucking, would you?
We do. I mean, when I started the business, I mean, I was saying yes to everything. And I think you and I had this conversation last time, especially when we were talking about like the decision to specialize or generalize in your market. And
Yeah.
I mean, we did dirt in the beginning, and like that's how I paid the bills. You know, I would say yes to a driveway job. I would say yes to, building new gravel driveways. We did some septic stuff year one. We just like my right hand guy and about to be business partner is very, very talented and very versatile. And so, yeah, we're in a constrained market here. And there's just not a ton of service providers. And so that's the direction that like I've taken with my business is we're open to taking more jobs. And I know, Brock, you have your opinions on that, but yeah, we've ran. I mean, I've got I've got a couple guys. I don't own any of my own trucks, but I have good relationships with two owner operators with tandems, and so they'll run for us anytime. But we're at 135, at least last year it was 135 an hour contracted. So where I was going to go, question wise, like with you owning your own trucks, well, whether you own or whether you contract, whenever you guys are putting in your estimates and you're building trucking into this. So let's say you Google map something 19 minutes or let's say 20 minutes for round numbers from the pit to the job site. How much buffer time do you add in for your trucking to account for the fact that it's a dump truck taking material at a slower rate than a normal vehicle would be? Do you guys have an equation that you use for that?
So for me, like when I do have my estimates, I work everything off a per load basis. I generally know what it's going to cost on average per load in that area. So I don't really look at like per hour what it's going to take for trucking, because a lot of guys around here that I'll use, they're almost flat rate pricing, right? So for filter sand, I'm going to be flat rate pricing per ton delivered, say within a certain vicinity. So if I'm 2 minutes from the pit or 20 minutes from the pit, it's going to be the same price. Like a lot of times, they'll charge you a fee if it's beyond a certain area. And same thing for us. I mean, with the truck, even if we're running our own truck, I do my costing on per load. So I do, like I evaluate, okay, how many loads am I going to need? I know it's going to cost roughly X amount, like this amount per load, and I work it off of that. And I do my job costing based on hiring everything out, right? So I do my job costing on not supplying my own truck. And then if I supply my own truck to increase efficiency, or, maybe save some money. I mean, you never really save money running your own truck, but say, if my driver's not doing anything, or she doesn't need to be on another job, then okay, we'll bring the truck in, we'll run there to increase efficiency. Like we just had her out last week, and like I was so thankful I did, because I had our truck going plus 2 other trucks going from another company. They were supposed to bring us, say, like 7 loads, and we ended up getting like 3 loads. They just couldn't keep up. They told us they could bring us that. They didn't. So I had my truck running. I brought my truck down there, and we had our truck running flat out trying to just bring the material in there. And I'm glad that we did, because they screwed us on a few of those loads, but I was happy I had my own truck, right? So I had to drive my truck, my driver had to drive an hour and 10 minutes down to the job site. So by the time you take that into account, you're not really saving money by the time you pay for fuel, but it was just the fact that we got those loads in there. So again, my job costing is based on what I'm paying for it from other companies, and if I can haul some of it myself, that's a bonus. But I don't look at like what it's going to cost to run my truck per hour or anything like that, and what I need to be charging. I just base it off what am I going to pay these bigger companies to bring it to me for.
Yeah, because they've already put the business model together, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and we know, we've bought material. Sometimes I'll have to check, like if we're working in a different area, then I'll usually call around a little bit and see, okay, what's this worth a ton, or what's this worth a load, kind of thing. But in my area, I know exactly what it's going to cost roughly. I mean, things change a little bit, but if I'm, if I'm going to be, if I'm doing a job, like if you're doing 5,000 loads, you probably want to know exactly to every penny what that's going to cost, because that's a big difference. When you're running 10, 15, 20 loads, if you're off by, 10 or 15 bucks a load, it's not really a big deal, or even say 20, 30 bucks a load. Because if I know, okay, for a load of septic sand, I'm generally, depending on where the job site is, I'm generally 475 to 525 a load. Okay, I'm going to do my job costing at 550, right? And then, I want to be accounted to say sell that for 625 or 650, right, per load. I don't want to be, when we're doing this many jobs, I don't want to be calling my trucking company every day and going, hey, how much delivered to here, how much delivered to there, how much delivered to here. It's like, I just, I'm not going to do that, because that's not how they base it off. They don't have a good metrics for us to use, right? So if I said, well, tell me per hour, it just wouldn't work out that way. So I know roughly what it's going to cost per load, and that's just how I do it.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, pretty similar. Like I have a gravel parking lot that we're redoing here in a couple weeks, and it's massive. So there's 600 ton of gravel to go in just to basically put a 1-inch freshen up on top of it. My trucks won't even leave the house. I mean, when you're talking the difference of 12 gravel train loads or 60 loads with my trucks, it's, putting a Band-Aid on the Hoover Dam when it leaks type of deal. So it's yeah, it's just using everybody else's prices type of deal for the same thing. I mean, when we get into small stuff, say, where I just have 2 single axles that I keep around, because a lot of the stuff we're working in around here is around the lakes and everything. Their houses slammed together. So they're pretty tight, not a lot of space. There's a lot of instances that tandem doesn't even get in to these areas that we're running. And I mean, you could, but you're just scrubbing mirrors off on tree branches and stuff. I mean, so in those cases, those ones are going to be more local. My trucks are more or less for a 15-mile radius around where we're at. Anything outside of that, we're going to be calling using somebody else's numbers. And then when I do it, I'm going to, use your 20-mile thing, for example. Okay, so round trip, if you were just there, turn around, come back, you're 40 minutes. Well, you have load time, you still have an employee factored into that. He's not going to be running it quite as fast as you are if you're in a rush or, oh my gosh, we're behind, got to go, whatever. That's an hour round trip. I mean, you can easily add 20 minutes for load dump and another 5 minutes for, the unforeseen type of deals. So you're going to be an hour around, and then take your hourly rate for that truck and add it to it and buy how many loads you need. And then when you get to the end, if it kind of comes down, tonnage wise, when I figure out, I guess I do it all by the ton because everything's off the scale here, not by the yard. So if it comes down to, you're at a fraction of a ton, you're going to round up to the next load, basically, to give yourself that little bit of leadway. Is kind of where I basically throwing an extra load there for a plus or minus type of deal.
When you convert yards to tons, what's the number you guys use?
So there's a few ways. I was always taught that you figure out your yardage, multiply it by 3,000 and divide it by 2,000, comes up with tonnage, and then I multiply it by, if it's gravel, 25% for, you're going to have some loss and some compaction when you're going in there. So I'm going from loose fill to compacted fill, and then sand is kind of like a 20%.
So would that be 1.5 multiplied by 1.5 if you went 3,000 divided by 2,000? Did I do that math correct?
Yeah, I'd have to double check it, but that simple math tells me
Brock,
that'd
in
be right.
my experience,
Brock, what's your?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you take your cubic, so to calculate your cubic yards, right, you take your square footage divided by 27, that gives you your cubic yards per 12 inches of lift. If your square meters, you times it by 0.399, that gives you your yards per 12 inches of lift for that area. So whatever it is, whatever yardage that you come out to for your cubic yards, what I use for is, if it's gravel, I just take that yardage, times it by 1.15. If it's sand, I times it by 1.3. If it's topsoil, depending on the time of the year, if it's wet or dry, I times it by 1.4, 1.5, and then clean fill, I do times 1.6 for your, because it's obviously like the loamier material. So if I calculate, if I want to dig a hole, whatever I calculate that compacted fill at, I take that yardage calculation that I have, I times that by 1.6. That'll give me my tonnage to base it off truck. So say if I have if I'm doing a cut, just for simple math, and it's, it's 100, say it's 100 cubic yards that I need to dig out. If I converted that to tonnage, say using the sand calculation at 1.3, that's going to say give me 130 ton. This is, say, for 12 inches in an area where it doesn't matter the lift size, just how many yards. But if I'm trucking it out in trucks, then I want to times it by 1.6 and then divide that number by how many, say, ton that truck can hold, right? 21, 22, 21, 22 ton on that truck. And then that'll tell me how many truckloads I need, right? Because again, for me, I base what I do generally off truckloads. When you're doing huge jobs, you need to do more, or like when you're running a lot of material, basing it off tonnage is usually better, more accurate tonnage and hourly kind of thing. But like when you're doing smaller jobs, it's generally a truckload. It costs X amount to have a truck there. So whether I haul out, when I'm doing clean fill, if I bring a truck in and load them with half a load or a full load, it costs me the same amount of money, right? So.
All right, listeners, you guys are getting the dirt guy math.
That's all part
like
of my book that I
everybody
put
has
together
their
there for
tricks.
septic design. Yeah.
Oh, you
So
did?
So yeah, I have a septic design book that I wrote, that I've sold a bunch around here to a bunch of guys. So it's just like a site overview, and then I used all my takeoff calculations. So I put a table on the back and how I do all mine. Again, there's so many different ways of doing it, but this is the way that I've done it, and it really seems to work out every time. And again, if you're running a site that's running, hundreds of thousands of tons, it might, you might use a different metric, but generally for what we're doing, all these metrics work. But your yardage for square meters or square feet, I mean, that's accurate. Those are real numbers, right? So your square feet divided by 27, that is your yards per 12 inches of lift, right? That's a known equation. But because we do everything in square meters, I kind of rework that number to come up with 0.399. So if you take your square meter and times it by 0.399, that'll give you your yardage per 12 inches of lift. So you have to remember, that's per 12 inches. I do everything in 12-inch lifts. So even for a septic, they're actually in 10-inch lifts, but I base my numbers off a 12-inch lift just for contingency and, spillage and stuff like that, right? So I just do it in 12. So it's actually 30 inches for your contact and surface area, but I base it on 36, right? So I just do all my calculations in 12-inch lifts. So again, if you're prepping for a pad and you want to do gravel, you take your square feet, divide by 27. That's your yardage for 12 inches. Divide that by 3. That's going to give you your yardage for 4 inches. If you're digging it out, times that number by 1.6. That's going to give you your tonnage. And then divide that by, say, 22 per triaxle, and that'll tell you how many trucks you need to pull out.
The masterclass right there. Where can we buy that book?
You can just reach out to me on Instagram. I don't have it posted. I don't have an online thing for online ordering right now. I just have, if anybody reaches out to me, we just get it sent out to them. We're just basically charging what it costs for me to print them. And
so I need to go to Instagram right now and send you a direct message if I want to purchase this.
Yeah. Send me a direct message with your shipping address, and we'll get it noted down, and we'll get it shipped out to you. And then we'll just let you know what the shipping cost is. We're charging it's $17 for the book. It cost me $15 to get it printed. So that's it.
So you make 2 off the deal?
Yeah, that's it. $2. $2 for me managing the transaction.
Right there.
I was gonna say,
pure capitalist.
No. Yeah. No, I'm
not. Gotta
these
get this on Audible.
These aren't to make.
Have you read it?
Yeah. Exactly. No, it's
all right. I just sent you a message in the chat.
Yeah, if you go on my Instagram, I put out a video actually a little while ago of me going through the book, and you can see me running through it, and it kind of shows it. When did I put that out? I put that out on March 15th. There's a reel of me walking you through it there, so you can kind of take a look and see if it's worth you buying.
Nice. I'll buy it for sure. I just sent you my address, so just send me whatever link you need me to pay. I think that's awesome. Have you ever looked into self-publishing on Amazon?
No.
I think it's pretty easy to do, and then you could just make it for sale on Amazon, and then people could buy like digital copies. I've seen it before. I'll see if I can pull up something for you, and I'll send it to you after this. That's awesome that you've wrote that book. Mike, you said you have a gravel. You're doing a gravel parking lot. Could you walk us through for anybody doing something similar on a grading job like that, just like how you thought about estimating that and just your thought process and then sort of calculations you used?
So this is a funny one. So pretty much my bread and butter is we have a 6-ton excavator, and I've got a track skid steer, kind of does what we're doing. This one's going to go more back to my background with building roads and everything else. Got contacted. They're like, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? Yeah, let's go take a look at it, because obviously I'm just starting out. I'm not, my machine setup is my bread and butter now. The goal is to not stay where we're at. I'm trying to hit a market that's in between kind of the residential guys here and the really, really big guys like I used to work for. There's kind of a dead space. So that's where we're trying to get built to. So it's like, yep, this is getting up our alley. Let's take a look at it. We'll get there. So you get there and you have a 350 foot by 600 foot long parking lot. You could pretty much set out about 4 or 5 days running with the skid steer. Excavator does you zero good on that job. And then you get to the end of it, how are you carrying grade? That's not going to pool water across that distance with a 6-foot wide bucket on a skid steer. So you pretty much throw all that stuff in the bag. Skid steer is going to go to work around the edges of the building and up to the concrete approaches and stuff. But other than that, it's like, okay, where's our next option? Are we buying, like a land plane for the skid steer and get like an 8-footer? So now you're getting out a little better and it carries grade a little more. Or are we still wasting our time here and start running numbers on that, doing a little research of what guys are doing with them? And it's like you're still looking at probably 3 days. So really come down to call the company I used to work for, got a good relationship with them. They rent equipment to me if I need it, and they're not a rental company. So kind of helps out that we can do this. So we're actually renting a grader, renting a roller, and using all their trucks to haul the gravel. So when you go in, you're going to pitch that kind of work to them. They have no problem, renting equipment to you. So really what it comes down to is, in all reality, it should be a 1-day job. They're maybe 10 miles out from their quarry where the gravel's coming from. So the 600-ton comes down to 12 train loads plus maybe a little change. So factored it for 13. And they're going to come in. There's plenty of room for them to turn around, and they don't even have to unhook to dump or anything. So they're actually going to chain their gates and spread dump out pups and leads and never stop, basically make full loop. They're going to send 6 guys for 2 rounds. They like to start at about 5 o'clock in the morning. So by 8 o'clock in the morning at the latest, they're done and out of there. And now I have 10 hours to run this grader across, which with a 14-foot blade going across there, it's not too many passes. So really comes down to, it helps with my past experience of directly working with them. I know what their trucks can do, how long it's going to take them, what kind of time it's going to give me to work on the job. And I know, what basically how many miles of road I could do in a day, running the grader, whatever we did before, or is, parking lots that size, basically what I can accomplish in a day's time. So essentially, that's about half of what I would normally be able to get in a day's time. Plus, we're already based in. So we're really just trying to carry enough material to freshen it up and fill the holes. So pretty easy just to kind of scoot across it and have a guy chase you with the roller and keep getting it pounded in. So that way, once you've worked your way across, you can get back on a compacted surface and basically brush it out and fine tune it a couple passes and be done and gone out of there. So worst case scenario, the next morning you got a few hours type of deal cleaning stuff up, whatever it is, and get moved out of there.
Do you blade that first with the grader before you truck in the material if it's got potholes or ruts in it?
Yeah, so if there's some pretty good potholes and stuff in it, I'll lay the blade down and kind of taper your way out of it for quite a ways, because otherwise them potholes are just going to want to chuck back out. Depending on what grader they send me, they have 3 of them. There's a couple that have scarifiers on them. So when you get up by the building or anything like that, where you're going to need to run through and scarify it and kind of roll some material out, because obviously it's already filled up flush with the concrete and stuff. So we're going to want to roll some out so we can get some fresh gravel up in. That's going to want to stick and compact in there instead of old stuff that's all broke down. So basically, cut around the edges, roll the blades with back to kind of taper your way in to get new gravel up at the edges. And anywhere there's potholes or anything like that, going to scarify or just basically blade way out at least like 10 feet in all direction of the pothole, just to make sure you don't redevelop the pothole in 2 weeks.
Makes sense. So how did you bill out that grader?
So hourly, I guess. Essentially, they sent me what a day rate is for rental. I broke that down to an hourly, and then I have everything figured for a day and a half, because obviously I know that we can do it in a day, but there's always, it blows a line, whatever. Something happens, a truck breaks down, and next thing you know, they don't get the gravel in quite as fast as they thought, or whatever happens. So I factored it for a day and a half because I know they would work with me. So I have a day rate, but if it come down to the next morning, needed it for a couple hours, they don't need it directly the next day. So the lowboy driver's not going to be sitting there beating on the door telling me to load it up first thing the next morning. So yeah, factored it in that way. And then also kind of compensate for some of it because if it turns out where, we need to do a little more, I have the skid steer and the roller factored for 2 full days, and all of our labor time and stuff is all 2 full days. So that way, if something happens, we get burned a little bit on the grader, or say we have to put a second full day in, there's a good chance the skid steer and stuff's not running that full second day.
Yep.
And kind of rob Peter, pay Paul type of deal, but just to try to make sure you're covering tracks to, allow that extra time.
Definitely. Yeah. I've been putting in a lot of grading bids this week. Just because we've been doing a little bit of marketing and yeah, we brought a grader in on our fleet just for gravel driveways around here and whatnot. And then just like HOA roads. So I'm really interested in how you do this. It sounds like we're very in line with how we're both looking at it. What is that day rate for the grader? Just curious up there.
$1,750.
$1,750 for the grader. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's for an 8-hour day?
No, they're not really watching hours. I can run it. I could run it the whole time. Yeah, there's in a lot of our rental companies around here, there's a couple that, and they don't like to really disclose that there's a few guys that got burned that were renting some equipment that, run it 12 hours because that's what they run and getting charged for 2 days because they had an 8-hour fine print thing down in the bottom there. Most of the places I deal with, if I'm renting it, just because you never know what you're going to get into. So that 8 hours can burn you. So I have a few places I rent with when I need to. I haven't in over a year, but they're it's yours for the day. If you got it for 24 hours from the time you pick it up to the time it needs to be back. So really you could run it, with travel time and stuff, you're looking at a couple hours, but you could put logistically 20 hours on it and still get it back in time. So if you wanted to stay up all night.
And that's just for the piece of equipment, right? Like that's $1,750 a day is not including an operator when you bill it out.
Oh, yep. That's so they go off of, because they don't normally rent, but if they have slow times or anything, certain people that they work with, they will rent out. So in the wintertime, basically everything is available for rent through them if somebody needs it, but they're just going to cat rental rates. So they're going to look at what their piece of equipment is, go to the equivalent size in cat if it's not a cat, and give you whatever cat's rate is.
That makes sense. What are both of you guys billing operator rates at right now?
Mine are figured into the equipment. I guess for me, it's easier to track that way. So like my trucking and my equipment rates are all machine and operator, because I guess to me it doesn't really matter which guy I put in, because you get so many people that it's too hard to keep track of that, are trying to flip flop around, and while this guy gets paid less, so then that machine rate would be less, and it's too hard to track out at the end of the job, or even just trying to bid the job, I guess. So I basically have a cost set that's going to just go across that machine, because I'm not gonna stick a guy in it, putting the new guy in it, quite fair, a fair amount of the time, but not in long spurts. I mean, he's got to learn too. We're in that point where you needed to learn, and all you want to do is run it. You're young, but certain places, applications, sticking them in there, giving them a couple hours in it type of deal. But for the most part, it's me or my other guy, and we're fully efficient operators. So you're going to get charged at that rate.
Brock, what about you? How do you view operator rates on your billing and your estimating?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, Yeah, pretty similar. Doesn't really matter to me the experience of the operator. It's a set rate. It's a set rate for a guy and a machine, like a machine and operator cost, right? So we have a cost for skid steer and operator, mini action operator, large hoe and operator. That's how we do it generally. If I was to break it down, I mean, I think what people, or maybe what you're asking is, what are you accounting for that operator? Generally, I would say, you're looking at about $75 an hour for an operator, right? That's, in the range that you're going to be in, and then kind of work your cost off, of that, whatever you want for that machine, whatever your minimum is for that machine, which if you work it off 75 an hour and say what the, what the blue book rate, I guess, is for that machine and what you should be charging per hour for it, it would actually probably realistically be a lot higher than what we are charging for them.
So what do you run a skid for? Like, what did both of you guys bill out a skid for hourly?
I do a day rate, so I don't do hourly. Anybody asks me to do it hourly, I won't do it. I do everything day rate, whether it's 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. I just do it by the day rate. For us, it's just easier that way. For hours tracking, things like that. So we're 1250. We're 1250 a day for a skid steer and an operator.
So that's for skid and operator.
Yeah, that's our skid and operator, $1,250 a day.
So roughly, you call it 625 for the operator, 625 to the skid per day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then how about you, Mike?
Mine would fall the same, 125 an hour based off of 10-hour day. So, because I mean, not really day rating it. Most jobs it's going to be factored for a day anyway. So I mean, essentially day rating it, I guess. But if you're getting into a smaller job or something, if it's going to be less than a half a day, I'm figuring it for a half a day. Where if you got a couple small ones, you're going to go try to hit 2 of them in the same day type of deal. But basically, once you're getting to that 6-hour mark, I'm not really feasibly getting moved and getting anything accomplished at another job once you kind of break that certain point. So then you're basically gonna get it. I'm gonna bid it for a day type of deal because you're getting too close to that range anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's really not worth I mean, yeah, with mobilization and whatnot, it's like the only scenario, and I was going over this with one of the guys who were going to work into estimating. I'm like, look, man, I will never bid for a half a day, except if we have 4 driveways right on the same road, right? Sure, right. I can allocate, my equipment rates and my labor rates to half days at that point, because it's like you're only running the grader half a day, legitimately, and going right to the next client. But if you're asking us to load up and come to your job 20 minutes away, it's like that's a full day rate no matter what. Because at the end of the day, even if you're running the equipment for half a day, by the time you load it all up, get back everything, you've blown a full day. So
right, the only thing you can do really to salvage what's left is move the equipment, get it dropped off at the next job, and kind of stage everything up. That helps you get maybe save an hour the next morning type of deal. But yeah, you're not going to accomplish much.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny when customers like try to like pinpoint that. So I don't know about you guys, but I've actually moved away from like sectioning out the line items on my bid, because I just give a lump sum and I just say, here's what we're going to do. Because man, I feel like you just open up a can of worms for people to say, oh, well, that's not going to take a full day with the grader. And it's like, but you don't understand that I got 3 guys, I got 3 pieces of equipment that all need to be moved. And that's all money out of my pocket that I'm having to pay, even if we're done at 2 p.m., right?
Yep.
They're still on my payroll. And, it's just one of those things. It's like, man, we're offering you a service and we're going to do a dang good job of it. We're going to do our absolute best to do that. And It's like just going to pay for the day rate, right?
Right. Yeah, I had one time as a customer that I'd worked, did, oh shoot, probably 2-3 jobs for, and then got to one, and for some reason they wanted it broke down, which they had jumped into as a fairly sizable project money wise. And they wanted, they're like, could you break that down a little bit? And it's like goes against everything I've ever stood for. But yeah, sure, they'd been great to work with, so it's like, yeah, that's fine. So go through, and I didn't break it down tremendously. I kind of, gave a couple things, not really line itemed it. I kind of like, here's, how long I think it's going to take type of deal, and da 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 da, couple breakdowns. And then then they start asking questions, and next thing you know, what they're trying to do is figure out where those big items were. And they're trying to pick it apart, to the point what they ended up doing to me was, oh, let's stick with these. And it's like, no, those are really cheap, because they kind of fell in. It's like, you don't understand my way I'm looking at it. They kind of fell in and coincided with this thing you're now saying you don't want to do. So it's really cheap, because I was already there, and there was going to be, I had to haul gravel in per se, and okay, you want to add a little bit more over here. So this wasn't quite a full load. I can pitch that off on there. I already got to haul it. So basically you're taking the trucking and stuff out of that other piece, because it's like, I'm already coming with the load. I wasn't a full load. I can throw some on, yada, yada. Then they want to pick it down to that. And it's like, well, no, that's, yeah, we're rebidding it now, because this all went together as a lump sum price. And it's like, you don't want to use the words with them hiding, but it's like, I'm hiding money from this to that and here. So at the end of the day, it all shares out the same. But then all they're going to end up doing is, once you get in and working on it, oh, hey, never mind, you were right, let's throw that back on. It's like, no, 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 no.
I
Now
mean,
we're
that's
really
why they call it
backwards.
estimating, right? Because you are
Right.
taking your absolute best guess. And I know the three of us sitting here, none of us are in business to like shaft a customer by any means.
Right.
But we all know how much this equipment costs, how much it costs to hire people, how much it costs to keep people, how much it costs for employee turnover, how much it costs for insurance. It's like we are managing so many different moving parts in this business. And sometimes, unless they have like prior construction experience, they don't actually see what goes on behind the scenes, right?
Right.
And so it's like, look, we are taking the absolute best guess, but I can guarantee you on every single estimate, there is something that's not going to be down to the penny for how
Right.
I estimated. Like I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Brock, you may be better at this. I just know every single estimate I send, it's like, okay, I may be a little over on my material here, but I may be under on my trucking. But at the end of the day, you just try to build in enough of a buffer to make it all wash out and not lose
So
money on the job.
yeah, and I think even on your I've had this conversation a few times in the last week with different guys, and I think I've, even on your Slack channel, talking with some guys and listening to other people talk, and like, this is just a personal thing for me, is I just feel that too many people are hung up on this kind of like analysis paralysis of like these little numbers and tracking every tiny little thing and wondering what, exactly, trying to estimate a job and worry about every grain of sand or every, dollar here, dollar there. But at the end of the day, you need to be estimating with the goal in mind that you have that buffer, and that there's enough you're looking for a 25% profit margin. Roughly what is on the job. You should understand where that job's at, and understand that, if things are going as planned, or you're spending more money than than you planned on, where it's at roughly, you go, okay, like, I'm now cutting into my profit margin, but hey, we're still in okay shape, because I put 25 jobs. So, but if you're running tight and you're running lean, all it takes is for you to look sideways one day, and now all of a sudden you're losing money on the job. No, that's just not how I want to operate. And like, talking about time and materials or working, like, I just keep myself out of those situations if I can. Like, again, I just have a certain rule that I work, certain values that I have, and I just don't really stray away from that. Right. I mean, I just don't want to work for you then. I don't need that job. There's certain circumstances where I have, like, I did, like we did a time and materials job last summer. It was, I was there for 2 months. It was $250,000 in work that we did. It was all time and materials based, based on a rate. It worked out great for us because it was a last minute kind of thing. They brought us in there for a $20,000 job to do for them, and we ended up, it was there, and $250,000 later, we just kept going. But also I made sure my rates were high enough. I made sure all my materials was, was healthy enough that I could still make money. Right. But that was okay, because if I tried to quote, I couldn't have quoted that job in that short a time, and I would have kind of maybe hung myself out to dry to lose money. So that was okay, because it was a site works job, and kind of, we were doing it for an engineer, and we were doing, a little bit beyond the septic. So I'm glad that I'm glad that we did that on T&M. But for the most part, I mean, I'm not going to come in and work for a day rate. To come in and do some work for you, work a half, like, if I came in, somebody wanted me to work a half day or something, or charge them for a half day, I would just laugh at them. I'm just not interested in that, right? Like, that's not what I'm here to do. There's a mobilization cost to everything, right? So, we just put a bid in on a job. It's a septic. It's $100,000 job, $100,000 septic. I know from the builder that the two other, one other quote came in at 120 and one came in at 130. We're the cheapest price, but I know how efficient we are at this system, because we're really good at it and really experienced with this system. If I did this on time materials, yeah, I could probably, I could do it for substantially less, but I'm already substantially less than everybody else. We can do it at this speed because we're good at it. So I'm not gonna, we're good at it. So I know that we can do it in this amount of time. But that's why I want to increase efficiency in my business, so I can make more money. So if all my guys are, weapons, and everyone's good and everyone's efficient and know what we're doing, what's the point of, like, getting your guys and getting your business to that point if you're still going to charge people the same amount of money, right? Like, I'm quoting and estimating these jobs, and I'm trying to increase efficiency. I'm not trying to increase efficiency generally just to save my client money, which is we still are saving them money. But in turn, if I can save them money and make me more money, well, then everybody's happy. But this client, even at $100,000, wanted me to break down every load, every hour, every machine cost, every operator, and I just wasn't interested, right? I'm just like, that's not how I run my business. This is a quoted job. This is what we want to do it. We're the cheapest price you got. So, why? But what they're trying to do is they're trying to look for value there, and they're trying to understand, if anybody's asking you to break it down by the hour, it's because they're going to watch you and they're going to keep track of your hours. And then if you get it done fast or efficient, they're going to want, some sort of discount or deal at the end, in my experience anyways.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's just too much overhead. It's like you got enough, and I'm not saying overhead is like a cost. I'm saying, like, it's like brain overload, right? It's like, to know that somebody's tracking you and watching every hour, going into it, it's not going to go to the exact hour that you estimated at. I mean, there's just so many moving parts. And so, yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. It's like, this is the cost to do it. And you know what? If you want us to be there, it's this price. If you don't, it's free. It's like, you're not paying for it, because we're not going to show up and do it.
Yeah.
Well, cool, guys. Hey, let's wrap this up. I know that one of you said that you had to be somewhere and have everything wrapped up here in 10 minutes. So this has been fun. I would love to have you guys back on and do this. Like, this is super fun to just kind of talk shop on the nitty gritty, behind the scenes details of just excavation related businesses. So thanks for joining this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good. We should do you do a Q&A or something sometime, if there's any questions in your Slack channel, not relating to septics, or kind of how we're doing things. I don't really know maybe the questions that some people want, or the answers that they're looking for, but I'm always willing to answer them if I can.
Sweet. Well, there you have it. It's Mike with EMPI and Brock with Canadian Sanitation, and you heard it from them. If you have any specific questions and you're listening on YouTube, just post those in the comments below so that we could do a Q&A and organize that for next time. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, just like and follow the podcast so that you get notified for things like this in the future. And then we're all about, creating great service businesses. And just like creating a great service business, 5-star reviews are super important for podcasts too. So if you're enjoying this type of content, would you mind to take 30 seconds and leave us a quick 5-star review? Without further ado, we'll wrap up this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one.